This week, I went to a value investor conference in Europe. There were a lot of speakers, all of them men. So two speakers stood out. Mohnish Pabrai, of course, you know, probably from this book, The Dando Investor. And what he said, I won't reveal it yet because I want you to see the video, to be quite honest. And then there was Paramés, who's written the book Investor for the Long Term. I haven't read it. I want to read it because I actually thought he was the most interesting speaker. Want to hear more about it? Let's dive in. Paramés said something that stood out with me. He said, if you are right 99% of the times, you're not taking enough risks. So the idea is that you will make investing mistakes, and that's okay, because if you're not, you're being too careful. I was like, oh, that's an interesting concept. He paired that with that you have to be really careful about how you are positioning your investments. He talked about how you have to be careful about how quickly you invest in a stock, how big you make the position. And said one of the biggest mistakes that he's made in his career was going way too fast when investing, that the position became a 5% position too quickly. He also said that any positions above 5% really have to be your main conviction stocks, something that you're totally sure about. There cannot be any mistakes with the positions above 5%. So yes, we will make investing mistakes, but let them be less than 5%. He also talked about inflation. He said there will be inflation because there are different problems in the world and different governments are going to print money. It is going to happen. And the best protection against inflation is holding assets. And when he says assets, he means investment in wonderful companies. Companies that have an ability to adapt and that do not have too much debt. He said, history shows that even in very, very high inflationary environments like in Germany back when and in Argentina, you were fine if you were holding on to good assets, good productive companies with a moat that can protect them and that do not have too much debt. He was asked if he could find anything to invest in this environment, because right now we are in a bubble. And if you're a value investor looking for underpriced, wonderful companies, is that even possible? And he said yes. He said that he could find value everywhere. He said that they were fully invested, no closed doors. He said he doesn't shy away from sectors that other people avoid. He gave one specific example to that. He said his largest investment is oil and gas. European banks are not allowed to invest there, so competition is low and there are a lot of opportunities. Well, if you ask me, I'm not too interested in investing in oil and gas, but it is classic value investing. Go where others don't look. He was also asked about passive investing, what he thought, and he called it our frenemy, not our friend and not our enemy, but something in between. He said, if 50% of the market doesn't think, that's great for the 50% of the market that does think. What does he mean by that? Well, with passive investing, people are investing passively. So it's just flowing into the market. People that are investing passively are following an index. That means they're not really looking carefully at what they're investing in. They're not looking at the companies, the leadership, debt level, and not at the prices versus value at all. So it's an automatic and pretty brain rot way, that's what my kids would use, a brain rot way to invest. And that is great for those who actually do think, that do invest with a brain, because we can find great opportunities that way. The other interesting investor speaking at the conference was Mohnish Pabrai. He talked about how important cloning is for him. Cloning means copying. So he's copying other investors. He says that he didn't have one original idea during his career. All he did was look at what, for example, Warren Buffett has been doing, or his right-hand man, Charlie Munger. He says Charlie Munger has once said, you have to take a simple idea and take it seriously. And he says that's what he's been doing. And one of those simple ideas comes from this book, Power versus Force by David Hawkins. And he talks about how truth is very, very important. You have to live a life where you are completely truthful to yourself and towards other people. Mohnish Pabrai says that people know subconsciously if you are telling the truth. And he gave the example that if you're going on a date with your wife, the wife asks you, how does this dress look? You can either choose to give a little white line, say, it looks wonderful, even if you don't think so. But she will feel that it's not completely honest. Or you can take the very honest path, the path of truth, and say if it doesn't look good on her. And maybe date night will be ruined. That's a chance that you're taking. But she will trust you. In David Hawkins' book, there is this ladder of consciousness where you go from shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear, desire, anger, pride, courage, all the way up. The highest level is enlightenment. The more truthful you live your life, the higher up you go. And he says it's very important to try to go as high, to climb up that ladder as high as you can possibly go in this life. Now, the funny thing about Mohnish Pabrai is that he didn't really talk about investing specifically. He talks more about a way of living life, but still it's super interesting. And, I'm not the only one thinking so. When he enters the door, straight from he arrives, it's like Elvis entered the building. People surround him. They want his autograph. They want to listen to what he's saying. I wanted to say hi to him, but it was physically not possible. I would have to chop up some limbs of some students. There were a lot of young men there, really eager to talk to Mohnish Pabrai. And he's really good at entertaining, and he's really tall as well. So he's standing there like, the king on the hill talking to his followers. So yeah, that's another interesting thing about him. There's a magnetic quality to what he's almost preaching, actually. He's like a preacher. And what is it about it? Well, the thought that I had was like, I had my own little enlightenment, and it is that what if you could invest following truth? Like if you could really, really, really get to the core of what an investment is. Because the idea is that you can feel anything. According to the theory, you can take this book and you would be able to sense, if you're very good at this and if you train yourself at it, if it's a good book. You can sense how enlightened this book is. On that ladder that I showed you before, you will feel where it is. What if you could do the same with investments? What if you could just feel the truth of the investment? Now, that sounds completely abstract. It does not sound like something stock market investors usually talk about. But there's something about it, though. There's also something quite intimidating about Mohnish Pabrai. He says that he can enter a room and he only wants to deal with the 5% best people. Like he doesn't care. He says like the 5% worst people, he doesn't want to have anything to do with them. And then there's the big middle, like he doesn't really care about those. And it's so intimidating because I'm wondering, am I top 5%? Honestly, I'm not sure. And that's kind of intimidating to meet someone who is so both clear in his thinking and that apparently follows this book so closely that he just knows, where on the ladder they are. I feel afraid of being judged by him. And yet he is also very down to earth. He was asked what is he reading? And he was like, I'm not reading much. Which is like, whoa, I thought that's what the top 5% would do. Wouldn't they read a lot? And he said, actually, he prefers to listen to podcasts. He is, for the time being, listening to Founders Podcast. And apparently this podcast will give his version of the books. And what Mohnish Pabrai said was that his way of understanding the book, on my notes, his reading on the book is better than my reading of the book. I mean, wow, here's a guy who's looking for the top 5% and he's not reading books, he's listening to podcasts. And he said he'd listened to 200 and the 400 episodes and he's overdosing on this podcast. I better listen to that podcast. And that's it. That's basically what he said. There was not a lot to it. It was very easy, but also quality of something magnetic. And that is the core of what I got out of a day at a conference. But the best part of it actually is not something that's easy to summarize. It was meeting the people there, having chats in the break. I was having lunch and I was watching Mohnish Pabrai from afar. I was like looking at the students around him and thinking, how can I say hi to him? And thinking, I'm not gonna battle the crowd. And some guys came over and I wasn't paying much attention to them. And then we started chatting anyway. I thought they looked a little boring, but actually they were really fun. And so I asked him, so who are you? And what do you do? And it turns out the guy next to me, who I thought looked really boring, he was the CEO of a fund that managed, I don't know exactly how many, but I heard the word billions euros. And then I asked about the track record, and he said 27% average the last 5 years. So not that boring, actually. I was really curious about what he was investing in. That's really well done. Billions, 27% average for 5 years. Pretty impressive. And that was just one conversation I had. I had a lot of conversations in the breaks and afterwards when we went to a bar for some pizza and some drinks. That was the best part, to be quite honest. And that's it. That's what I had for you today. I was recording this video at around, let's see, almost 1:30 in the morning because I've promised myself to make a YouTube video every week. And this week was just crazy with the conference and a lot of other stuff going on. See you next time.